In this episode, I shall be talking to Shane Hampsheir, and Shane will be telling me how he became a crooner. It's a great story, this, and also while we're discussing this, he is on a luxury liner in the Greek, around the Greek Isles. So, tough life, but somebody has to do it. So let's get on with the show. Right, today's episode, I shall be talking to Shane Hampsheir. Hi, Shane. How are you?
Hello, Vic. Oh, just great. I'm on a booze cruise coming back from Calais. That's not true. I'm actually supposed to be working, but yeah, I'm on a very nice cruise ship, Norwegian cruise line ship, and I've been here for 2.5 weeks. So I'm as chilled out as can be, to be honest.
And where are you? You're not in Norway, obviously.
Not in Norway. No, it would be a lot more windy. But I'm actually in the Greek Isles, which couldn't be any better, to be honest. It's just beautiful sunshine every day, and I don't want to make anyone jealous, but it is like paradise. The perfect retreat.
Fantastic stuff. Brilliant. So I've got traditional...
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm cool. I'm all right, mate. I'm still here. And,
great. Exactly. I'm so glad to hear it.
And we've been comparing beards and hair before we hit record.
That's right. Yeah, I was saying how you inspired me, but really it was just being stuck at home for 1.5 years. But I guess we'll get on to that.
So my traditional first question is, what do you do?
I'm a swing big band and jazz singer, really. Trying to keep the music alive, the music of Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, the Rat Pack, and all those guys and girls, and also Michael Bublé. So some more of the more modern crooners as well. And in my genre, I would say you mostly end up singing covers. I mean, that's by definition, keeping the music alive means you're singing old music. So that's what I tend to do the most. I also write music or songs, and I let someone else do the music part. But yeah, I love lyric writing, and I'm also very creative in terms of like film editing and graphic design and stuff. I mean, that's just is part and parcel of being a self-employed singer nowadays. You have to do everything.
Cool. It does, and there's a tradition to that. We'll stumble across that a bit later, I'm sure, actually, because some of the guys back in the day did a lot of their own publicity stuff, didn't they? I'm thinking of Duke Ellington. Actually, he did his own posters and all sorts of things, which is amazing. Really.
Well, they were pioneers back then. Absolutely, yeah.
Totally. So, how did you get involved in that? Because it's sort of unusual, because you're not anywhere near the age that people will assume for a crooner. So
yeah,
how did you get involved in music generally? It's obviously quite early on.
Well, I always enjoyed showing off, so that's a good start, because my older sister was performing a lot, Joanne, who also went to the same school, and she would dance around the living room, and we'd sing songs together at home. We were always putting on a show in the living room for our parents and grandparents and things like that. We'd have the curtains drawn by the back door, and then we'd open the curtains and the show would start. And it was just messing around, passing the time, maybe even trying to cheer everybody up, But that developed. I mean, as you know, I went to a very supportive school in terms of the arts, and I couldn't have thanked the teachers there, you know, yourself included, for I couldn't thank them enough for how much they supported anybody who wanted to go down this route. And from there on, I mean, I was in all the school musicals and the school Gambia concerts, you know, concerts to raise money for these trips. The sixth formers would go to Gambia, and they'd need the money raised, and I'd perform in all of those shows. And unbeknownst to me, it was becoming a real passion. You know, I was really just doing it because a couple of mates were doing it, and there was some girls who seemed impressed by it. You know, but you know, I didn't know. I was honing my, you know, I was really just making sure that I was getting as much. I was basically just enjoying myself, and it turned into a hobby, and then it turned into a job.
That's interesting. Would you say it sort of crept up on you?
It absolutely did, yeah, because I guess it, you know, like any habit or whatever, you know, you just, it comes out of nowhere. And but as a kid, music was everywhere. And of course, you know, growing up in the 90s, you had all the previous generations' music as well. So it was a great time to grow up and have the radio on, because it was just great music. And now I think back to 90s music and think actually a lot of it was still kind of experimental and cool to listen back to that stuff now. But at the time it just felt very poppy. But yeah, compared to today's music, it was still kind of out there. And it really did. I did develop a love for playing the guitar and dancing around, and that led me to then audition to go to a performing arts college. So that's what happened next after I met you.
Okay, so I want to sort of because what I'm sort of interested in, and I think, you know, when you're like starting out, I'm sort of doing like, it's a public service thing I'm doing really, which is allowing people to realize that there's no straight one path. There's lots of different ways of people getting involved in the arts, you know.
That it creeps up on you.
And and in this case, it could sort of creep up on you. So when did you get that sort of thing, that this is what, either A, I'm quite good at this, or B, I really like this?
That came much later.
Yeah. Okay. So it might have been, I really like this. I really like doing this.
Yeah.
And then you start thinking to yourself, this is what I'm going to do. Or it's just one of those, you know, what's that moment? Is there something that you can sort of
That one's really easy for me, actually, Vic. Yeah, because when I was 13, this is 2001. I think it must have been about September, maybe August. Robbie Williams performed a concert at the Royal Albert Hall, and he was performing all of his songs from his forthcoming album, Swing When You're Winning. And that was only 20 years ago. But yeah, that was the thing, that was the catalyst to propel me into this world of jazz and big band music. And as soon as I heard that, and I always say this, as soon as I heard that music, I knew exactly what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and that was to tour around and play with big bands and sing these wonderful songs. I had no idea these songs existed. My mum and dad listened to 80s, you know, kind of punk and ska, you know, I'm talking about like Blondie and Madness and that kind of stuff. So that was what I was exposed to as a kid, which I love now, but I hated it at the time. And I was used to listening to the likes of the Spice Girls and Peter Andre, and you know, that was the music that was around when I was a kid. And then I heard this real sophisticated style, this genre, that just absolutely punches you in the face when you hear it, because it's blaring trumpets and the guy's wearing a dinner suit, and you're like, wow, this is it looks great, but it sounds luxurious, and that's really what grabbed me. So yeah, I was 13 years old.
So it's interesting this, because I really get what you're saying about it being sort of luxurious, and obviously, often when I teach kids music by bands like Zeppelin and AC/DC, the actual structures of how the vocals fit with the backing. You could listen to a big band arrangement for Frank Sinatra, and it's the same. Nobody plays when Frank's singing, type of thing. All the horns are playing, in the gaps, and if you listen to the way that really good rock songs are put together, like an AC/DC song, in the verses there's empty spaces where the vocals are, and I always sort of look at that and think, so even though, and of course that's done for impact, that's the point, that music works in that way, that the juggernaut that is the horn section isn't riding roughshod over the vocals, and those arrangements are incredible.
That's right.
So when you
when
you hear that in situ, not just on a record, but you're sitting there watching somebody who you already know is really a great performer anyway, and then you hear that, it everything gets plugged back in, and I could really get what that would have done for you.
Absolutely. And I mean, they don't write them like they used to, but I know they're not trying, but those songs are basically poetry.
Yes.
Each lyric written by the great, the greats from both sides of the pond, but I think it was just it coming from a kind of blues / classical background, just something that teenagers or whatever could dance, or actually maybe slightly older, but young adults could go out and dance to, and but they just happen to be written by some brilliant composers, and just will stand the test of time. We'll still be listening to this music in 500 years,
Yes.
Well, we won't, but someone will.
Yeah, because as you say about the lyrics, they are so incredibly well crafted. It's amazing.
There's no like throwaway lyric. You rarely come across that where you feel like, oh, that was a bit lazy, or that will do. It's all crafted beautifully. And I wonder about the rock bands and that kind of stuff, where the singer's singing, and then in the gaps there'll be a guitar fill, a nice phrase, from the guitarist. But I guess a lot of the time in those bands, maybe I'm wrong, you'll know better than me, but the lead singer is often the lead guitarist as well, perhaps. I mean, that might be a thing that's true, so when they're singing, possibly. they're not fiddling around.
No, I think what it is in the sort of structure,
but maybe that,
in the sort of structural thing, is you've got to remember when those, particularly with bands like Zeppelin, obviously, that wasn't that long ago when they were writing.
You're right, I see what you mean.
There's a bigger gap between them and Led Zeppelin and us now than probably was from Led Zeppelin to the big band stuff.
Well, when did they start out? When was their heyday?
Well, early 70s, really. I mean, if you talk about their heyday, 1969, they were definitely together. So you're talking about the early 70s. So if you look at that, you're talking about, the mid 50s, right? That's
absolutely,
not long, but from then to now, we're talking 50 years. From 1970 to now.
Yeah, I know.
So
I know, and a lot of those great artists and composers are still around, of course, you know, and still working. So they're all influencing each other, you know, and I guess the rock and roll.
There's a lot of crossover between
era as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover between jazz and rock music that's sort of frequently not picked up on.
So many.
Yeah, frequently, not just from the fact that somebody can write a piece of music that's got an arrangement that you could look at, you know, you could squint at and you go, it's really not rock, you know, that's coming from somewhere else. Even to sort of techniques and stuff, where obviously certain really big players, you know, Hendrix is obviously one of classic examples of that, really heavily influenced by jazz players, and even some of the chord progressions that you look at them and go, that's a jazz chord progression. That's, you know, so I think, I think really, you know, when you hear that music, and it had such vast, you know, because it does have a vast impact. The thing is that, because I think probably, you know, even you would have found it, or people contemporary with you would have found that sort of music unfamiliar, if you see what I mean, because you didn't hear it very much. For
sure.
You know, unless you listen to, I don't know, certain radio programs on certain radio stations, which obviously you wouldn't do. So
you wouldn't do it unless you found those things yourself. You know, my parents, for instance, would only ever listen to Heart Radio and Magic, you know, in the 90s. So
what was
you were getting all the commercial stuff.
So what did they think when you suddenly went, I want to do that? What was this?
A little bit odd. I think they knew I was already kind of a fan of Robbie Williams, because he'd just come out really with some huge hits at that time, Angels and Rock DJ, and, you know, all those great songs that I mean, and they are, but then he came out with this thing, and I think they kind of dug it as well, you know, but I just took it to an extreme, you know. It's funny to think about the impact that Robbie Williams has had on a generation, because there's so many swing singers around, and it's not only because of Michael Bublé nowadays. You know, it really did start with, for a lot of people, it started with Robbie Williams, and then before that, I guess Harry Connick Jr. But But Robbie influenced a lot of people, and that is kind of strange. As soon as you start traveling the world and performing this music, is you go over to the States, and they are as confused as my parents once were that I would be into this kind of music, because they didn't have a Robbie Williams reviving it in the early 2000s, you know. So for them, Michael Bublé was the first guy since Harry Connick Jr. to come and do it and make it a mainstream thing again. But so there are actually, I would say, more swing singers in our little island of Great Britain than there are in the States at the moment.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah,
incredible.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of moving to the States because there's less competition.
Yeah. Good move. Good move. So you're saying you went to a performing arts college?
Yeah, I did a 3-year musical theatre course.
So when you went in and said, did you sort of go, yeah, okay, you musical theatre, but I want to sing swing stuff and, you know, Rat Pack?
Well, I auditioned for the college with "Have You Met Miss Jones?" It was one of the songs I knew.
Yeah.
And then I got accepted into the college. So I think they knew I liked that kind of thing, but they don't want you to only like that stuff. You have to be good at all the Phantom and Les Mis stuff too.
Yeah.
But it was funny really, because I already knew what I wanted to do, as I said. So I'm 16. I've started college, and I'm just trying to learn more skills to help me do what I want to do, and that is tap dancing and all. You know, doing 9 a.m. ballet classes that you think, well, I'm not really going to use this bit, but you know, I guess it helps. It all helps. But in my second year at college, I got my first professional gig. So I was 17, and I had a gig at at a working men's club in Guildford, and that was one of about 8 gigs I had that month. So I obviously had a very helpful agent as well, and it's funny how I got that agent, because it was well, seeing as we have a little while, I'll tell you. But basically, my local post office, my dad and I were in there, and just sending some letters off or whatever. He was doing some work, and then he bumped into the guys who run the local social club in Hartley.
All right.
And said, hey, you have some entertainment, don't you, in your club? And I'd been going there since I was a kid, because he used to play cricket for Hartley, and that's where we'd end up every Saturday night. So I did know these owners very well, and they helped me out tremendously, because they basically sent me and my dad the phone number for the agent they used for their entertainment, and we got in touch with him. We had an audition at the social club like the next Wednesday, and I suddenly got all these gigs. I think I sang "Do I Diddy," "Dance the Night Away," and "Brown Eyed Girl," and the agent went, yeah, I like that. Yeah, all right, I can do something with that. And then all of a sudden I had all these gigs. So I was only in my second year at college at the time, and already sidetracked doing these gigs every weekend.
So when did you get? So that's interesting, because obviously there are sort of older pop songs, but when did you then start to move into the idea that you could, to get a band playing swing music behind you it's not like going to get a drummer and a bass player, is it?
No, it's not.
So how did you?
No, it has to be a certain type, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of people,
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you must have started off like a little trio or something. How did all that develop?
Yeah. So, I started out, this agency, they were only really interested in you going out to pubs with backing tracks, on your CD player, or I guess your mini disc player at that time. Yeah. And I did that for about 1.5 years or 2 years, and that was a great time. Actually, I learned so much doing those venues, all sorts of things around like Chatham and all the Medway area, and just most of Kent. A real eye opener. I remember there was one pub where I wasn't singing what they wanted me to sing. I was singing McFly and Busted, and just stuff that I was, stuff I enjoyed. And then one guy came up to my dad, who was doing the sound, or really just pressing play and on, doing the faders on the mixer. And he said, does he know any Tom Jones? Because this is rubbish. And I remember hearing that, thinking, maybe they don't want to hear songs by Busted in this pub. So I better just sort of change what I was doing. And I had a great one of those karaoke machines where you could shift the key up and down, and it had like three drawers. You could put 3 CDs in at a time. So I just practiced on that with that karaoke machine, finding out exactly which key I do all these songs in, and I just had a huge booklet of CDs and CDGs, karaoke tracks and things like that. So I was in a great position to learn new songs that way. Later on, I guess 2 years later I started getting more wedding gigs. So like 19, 20 years old. And a couple of these wedding clients wanted a live band, wanted me to have a band with me. So I looked around. I had already been for a year or so working with a semi-pro big band called the Ben Beddoes Big Band, and they actually rehearsed every Monday at the Mick Jagger Centre in Dartford. Dartford, I know, has crept up on your podcast very many times now, especially with the likes of Paul Shedd. But then
exactly,
which is great. But then, so I've been working with this band. There was a trumpet player in that semi-pro band called Evan Jolly, who also played the piano. And whenever I would do a gig with this big band, he would play piano because he wanted to be my MD. He wanted to sort of look after me, rather than be on third trumpet, in the trumpet section. So he he was only about 5 or 6 years older than me, but he seemed to be like this genius who could do everything. And he was always very helpful. I said to him, Evan, I need a band for this wedding. Can you sort something out? Turns out he was well equipped to help out, because he had a huge pad of like combo charts, which I had no idea what that meant at the time. But it's just a smaller band, you know. So it's could be 5, 6, 7, 8, 11 piece even, I guess. But still a lot more musicians than I was used to working with, you know, having only worked with backing tracks. So it was a real learning curve, and he kind of sorted me out. I started working with his band of fantastic musicians, because I think he studied in London. I can't remember which college, but you know, he just had so many fantastic numbers in his contacts, and from there on, from then on, I that's all I ever did was work with these fantastic musicians and 7-piece bands, and I also developed my own great contacts list, you know. So yeah,
that's amazing, because again, it's like a situation occurs, and you know you have to adapt to fit that, and then that puts you in a place that you wouldn't have planned to have done. You know, it's not like there's a plan. I'm now going to
that's
go
right.
with a big band. It's how things develop, and and I think that's
it was an opportunity to level up.
Yeah, exactly. So so when you start doing these, then what, you're obviously sort of creeping up a ladder. It's the wrong word. You know what I mean? It's like you're.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So what sort of things happen that you sort of go, this is different, like you've changed gear? So you've got these.
It was I would say I was working with mostly, you know, this great agent, Tony at GT Artists, the agency was, and you know, that was one step. The next step was I got with a second agent, because, you know, the one agent, if I wanted to move out of my dad's place at the time, I needed a bit more money. So I got another agent who got me those wedding gigs. From there on, I worked with more and more musicians. And it was really, I guess, the first time a musician booked me to do a gig that I thought, oh, wow, okay, I must be doing something right now, because, you know, the layman, you know, the everyday guy, girl getting married or whatever, you know, they have knowledge to a point in terms of musical knowledge, you know, well, basically, a musician books you, you think, right, I'm doing something right, and that was really a great turning point in my career. And even now when that happens, I'm like, oh wow, I'm so honoured.
Yeah, that's true, because I think one of the, however nice the wedding gigs are and everything, and sometimes they're not necessarily that nice, but you know, normally we sort of need them to make the money come in a bit. But you're not, and you've already said this, that of course you're singing other people's songs, because obviously you're keeping a style alive, or reviving style, really. So you're not going to be doing an awful lot of your own material, but
no,
there is still something different about stuff that you're doing, because how can I put this? You're not just doing covers, you know, in a situation.
Right.
Are you? You know what I mean? You're not just doing a load of covers.
Yeah.
For a party, it's something different. And there is something very important in that, I think, isn't it? Really, because
that's right. I guess
there is a big motivator in this, which I'm trying to sort of get to, in how you've been so motivated doing this particular type of music.
Right.
I'm just wondering
Well,
what that is.
Well, it's, the reason why Sinatra was so important is because his version of a song is the version. You can listen to someone else do it, but at the end of the day, I think you always go back. You always end up back at Sinatra, and so I'm trying to also do my own versions, I guess.
Yeah. What is it about Sinatra?
Yeah.
What is it about him and his style?
I guess it's not only his voice, because obviously that's the first thing you realize is happening, is that someone's singing and it sounds really good. But it's like more of a, there's a lot of documentaries about Frank Sinatra, about his personality, maybe the people he was tied in with, and his 5 marriages or whatever. But there's a presence, you just felt like this is the guy who understands completely where these lyrics are coming from, even though he didn't write them. Just the perfect actor in these songs, as well as all of his musical ability, being able to phrase it perfectly, more so than a lot of other people. Not always perfectly. Even now when I listen to him, I think, oh, why did you sing it like that? But that's only because I've lived inside his voice, and I've studied it, so then now when I hear something, I think, oh, that's interesting, he did that. Now I don't feel so bad when I don't phrase something perfectly, but for me, he's the guy, he's the perfect kind of vocal vessel to deliver these huge numbers.
Because there is something about his timing, which is in fact, I'm not comparing the two of these, but there's another singer who you can go, it's about their timing, but it's in a different way, and that's Adele. She'll sing a line in such a way that you wouldn't have expected it to have landed in that place, right? And I think that's a mark of a really great musician. It's obviously a mark of a great musician, but I could also say that's true with somebody like John Bonham, the drummer for Led Zeppelin. That it's like those sort of drum rolls, they stop, or they land, not stop, they land at a point that catches you unaware in a way that is exciting.
Yeah.
And I think that's what goes on with Frank Sinatra. There's an interesting story about Frank Sinatra.
Go on.
I was in a band with Roger Moore's son, Jeff, and obviously they knew everyone, literally.
Yeah.
Anybody worth knowing, they knew. And he had vocal coaching from Frank Sinatra because they were friends, So
oh my word!
I know. It's and he sang it. Yeah. So Jeff had this. I don't know what that would have been quite, but he told this story. Now I don't know how true this is, because stories are stories, aren't they? But things about his when he recorded, sometimes he would turn up in the studio. The band had already been in there going through the material. He'd walk in and do a couple of takes and walk out. And he got this sort of thing of, or even just one take, he'd go in and nail it. Yeah. But what the people didn't know was that he was in a hotel around the corner from the studio, practicing.
Right. Yeah.
So before
that makes
he
sense.
got there,
that does tie in with his.
Yeah. Before he got there.
Yeah.
He was already there. in the song, you know. So he got this sort of thing of just turning up and just doing a couple of takes as if it didn't matter, but it was far from the truth, because he'd been like working.
Well, he was nicely warmed up, and he'd probably have been practicing with just a pianist, with just his pianist, like Bill Miller or somebody like that.
He was
in his room or whatever.
But the thing was, it always looked like he just walked in, did the thing and walked out again, which is, so I suppose it was part of the mystique, really.
Right. And I'd heard that actually. I'd heard also that, you know, he'd been practicing with his pianist perhaps, and then goes into the studio, and of course he wants to just do a vocal performance and get out. That's what it sounds like, right? So, you know, why would you hang around if you if you've just performed the song, you're happy with it, no point hanging around. But if the band weren't as rehearsed as he was, that's the thing. It's like, often I think whenever he would need a third or fourth take, it often wasn't because he had done something bad. It was because maybe the bass trombone or something scuffed something up, you know. And then he would really lay into him. Or he'd say something horrible over the microphone for sure, because he's done the work, you know, and they've had ample time and money to do the work too, you know. So how comes they're getting it wrong? But yeah, I'm not at that point yet. But maybe when I'm 50 and, you know, 55 or whatever, I can have that kind of attitude towards it all. But for now, I'm still just so happy to be working, well, especially now, working with any musicians, you know. So yeah, that's a hell of a story, and there's so many about that guy. But I just think he's the number one.
Yeah. That's great, actually, because, you know, it is that sort of thing of really trying to understand a song through a particular artist's lens in order to learn what it is that they do, you know. I think it's really important, because obviously you do it with guitar, don't you? You do it with any instrument, you know. You become sort of obsessive about the stuff. And it's kind of that's a nice luxury, isn't it, to have the suite with the grand piano in it, so your pianist can come and rehearse with you before you go into the studio. And of course that's the way you should do it. Of course it is. But if you're an independent artist, and, you know, like nowadays so many artists are, because the record labels and, you know, that whole thing is a mess. Like, you know, do you need that, do you not need that kind of thing? But, you know, you're paying for everything out of your own pocket, and it is hard even just to do the album in the first place, to pay for the studio, which, if you want a good studio, is a lot of money or whatever, and all the musicians are on the MU rates minimum, you know, and on top of that, you've got to then pay for this pianist to come and rehearse with you beforehand. It's just, I mean, only the likes of Sinatra would have really just relied on that and taken it for granted as much as he did, I think. Yeah, but, you know, he obviously wasn't short of a bob or two, was he? So, you know,
no, exactly.
he probably owned the hotel he was in, you know, rehearsing, and possibly the recording. Who's to say?
Yeah, that's true. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he was the chairman of the board, so why not?
He certainly was. Yes. So with the stuff that you've been doing, I mean, you've done some really amazing gigs and sort of recordings. And hang on, somebody's done something here. Hold on just a minute. I'll have to edit this bit out.
No problem.
Hey,
did you hear about the guy who walked into the bar? No.
Yeah. We'll have to do that. I'm just going to send a little message a minute. Podcast. Somebody rang me.
Oh, okay.
And then
do we have to start again?
No, we don't, because he won't be able to. What I've realised is he can't he can't join in, because I've had this happen once before where somebody's tried to get on and it flashes up and says you've been signed out.
Oh.
But it doesn't actually do that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we'll carry on. So great. So we've got now. I was saying you've done some sort of recordings and stuff that have been.
Yeah.
Perhaps you can tell me a little bit about how that all came about. Because you did something. Was it picked up on some sort of TV ad or something? I can't remember. What was it? It was.
Yeah, that was when I was 19. I had just left college and I was doing a pantomime. Oh yes, I was, and I was. It was one of those touring pantomimes. You got to be quicker, I'm afraid.
Yeah, sorry.
It was one of those. That's all right. It's the delay, I understand. But it was one of those touring pantos where you're shifting the scenery around yourself, even though you're like the lead character or whatever. But you know, you're working as a team. I had this huge bit of scenery in my hands, and my phone was vibrating in my pocket, and I was like, oh, I'll just shift this thing. But anyway, luckily I just got to it in time because it was Universal Records, and they'd never rang me before, so this was very exciting, especially at that age. So they said that they needed a Michael Bublé sound-alike to come and record a song called Home, Michael Bublé's Home, to go on a compilation album for the following Mother's Day. And it would have some huge names on it, this album. I had no idea at the time, but I had to go up to the studio in Birmingham, record these vocals, and we did it line by line, like literally almost word by word, just to make it absolutely as close to the original as possible. And anyway, it all went very well. They sent it off to Universal, that they ended up loving it. They put it second on it was a 2 CD compilation album, and I was track 2 on the first CD. And I was surrounded by like Joe Cocker and Girls Aloud and the Jacksons and Louis Armstrong, and it said Shane Hampshire. You know, it was absolutely incredible. And really big for me at the time, and really helped me to do a lot of other things around that age. But the album, when it released in the March of 2008, got to #1 in the UK compilation album chart, and that was really an interesting thing to happen at such a young age, because I did want that kind of life. I wanted to be famous and have fame and glory and all the money and that, you know, because of my idols being who they were. And then this great thing happens where you're on this album with all these huge names, and you think, great, this is it. This is going to be that really, you know, really pushes me on to higher things or bigger things. And really it's just kind of like a standalone piece of glory in my life, because after that, you know, I just sort of went back to normal gigging again. It was kind of, that's just sometimes the way it is.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that is sort of weird, isn't it? Because again, there's loads of stories like that, aren't there? Where I think the most bizarre one I heard was a band from the Medway Towns. I can't remember who they were now, but a band from the Medway Towns, they did a single like we all did, you know, run off 1,000 copies or whatever. And suddenly this single got to #1 in Belgium or somewhere, or #5 in Belgium, right? So they left there, they caught a plane from wherever it was, you know, all got there, you know, probably borrowed a car to get there, got off the plane in Belgium, got picked up by a limo, taken to the studio where they were recording this thing. I think they obviously had their guitars with them, but you know, everything else was sort of mine. Did that, you know, stayed in the hotel overnight, got the limo back to the airport, caught the plane back, arrived back in Blighty, and it was like
nothing had happened.
Like nothing had happened. And you go, that's sort of almost totally surreal. So when you had this happen,
it is,
because I can remember you know, this happening to you. That must have been tricky to get your head around, because apart from the fact you think, wow, but it's not as easy as that, is it? That type of thing when you sort of get a break. You have to.
No, I was expecting the likes of Michael Bublé to have heard that version, because at the time he was still quite new, and I guess that's why they wanted it on this album, because it was exciting to have. But I think actually the truth of the matter is, now I think about it, is this was Universal Records and Michael Bublé is with Warner Brothers, so they're two competing that. And they just didn't want to pay all that, the hundreds of thousands they would have had to have paid to get the licensing to sell it.
Yes.
So they got their own version.
Yes.
And
that
I
sounds
just
about
thought,
right.
okay, look, yeah, right. You've been around, this kind of thing. So I was thinking, well, look, even if I don't have any real success, like in the public eye, from this, like long term, maybe I should approach Universal and see if they want to do something, because they seem to like the recording, so. And then they had this audition, they wanted the next Jamie Cullum, and he was already quite new at that time, but they wanted another one, and so I auditioned for that and they weren't interested. It was just the most confusing time, because I thought I'd made it. And I was like, well, come on then. And then nothing happened. But yeah, that does happen a lot. It is hard to wrap your brain around. I'm still having therapy now, but it's like it's just one of those. Yeah, it is, because I'm 33 now, and it's like, well, that would have been the perfect time to have really had my career kick off in a big way, because that's the sort of age that all these labels are looking for, but or back then at least. But yeah, it was kind of weird, but luckily I had like my dad was managing me at the time and did a great job. He did really get out of it as much as we could. So we got some newspaper, like national newspaper stuff. There was this thing where I had auditioned for the X Factor when I was 16, and funnily enough, they didn't like me either, but Simon Cowell said something particularly horrible. Louis Walsh said that he thinks I need a very good vocal coach, and that's probably true. And then Simon Cowell said, not even a magician could make you sing, Shane, like that. So so then when this thing happened with Universal Records and I'm on this #1 album, that was the angle. It was like, well, I did this, and Simon Cowell said I couldn't sing. So, we really did make the most of it, and all these things need an angle. And that was really the best angle I've ever had, to be honest. So I'm very thankful for that whole experience, but it was confusing.
Yeah, but I really like what you've just said, because you've got this ability to look at that, because you've not mentioned the fact that happened, the X Factor thing. And and that, and every artist gets that sort of kick in the teeth type of thing happen, where people say things to you, and when you look back at it, you just think that's just ridiculous. Why would somebody say something like that? Because it's patently not true. If they can't.
Or nice, Yeah,
it's not necessary
for a 16-year-old. That was harsh.
Yeah, I know. And and sometimes you get that on a and you have to learn, don't you, to deal with that. I'm not really sure if people are as tough. Young kids are as tough to things like that as because everything's a little bit sort of sugar coated with life, and I can understand that.
I know what you mean. Yeah,
I can certainly remember some places I played, and I was lucky to get out in one piece, let alone whether people liked you or not.
That's right. Yeah,
particularly. This is why I thought it was quite interesting when you were talking about doing that sort of stuff around the Medway towns. because obviously not a lot
Yeah,
of people will
yeah,
know the
I know.
Mayday
And then I
dance.
told
But
you a story, but I guess you might have experienced perhaps a bit worse. It seems to be like the gigs that I did do. Nobody, I wasn't singing heavy rock. I wasn't singing much rock at all, to be honest. So, you know, it all seemed to be whatever music I was singing was actually kind of, relaxing. So it's like what McDonald's do now, where they play classical music after midnight, just so that nobody kicks off. So it was kind of the same sort of thing for me. But for you guys in your, playing all that stuff, people, especially if you have like mosh pits and things like that. I don't know. I've seen that stuff, and it can get really out of hand. But luckily, I never had any of those stories at my gig.
no, I mean, the biggest problem was not so much the music you played and the punters; it was just the punters.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But I really did work hard back then to appease everybody, and I made a big thing of, and I think it was because of Robbie Williams. Like, I was an entertainer. That's really how I would have defined myself at the time, was an entertainer rather than a singer. Because I was as cheeky as you could be. I was jumping up on the tables, doing all this dancing, getting everybody to do the what's the thing? You're in a chain and you're dancing around the room together.
Like
that,
or whatever, yeah.
Just the conga, yeah. Just absolutely, just trying to give people the best time possible, and be as silly with it as possible. And I really think that I seem to have developed some kind of so I don't know. Looking back, I think I was probably just very cheeky and charming. I could get myself out of any situation back then by just having a laugh.
So a lot of this then really comes down to that ability to be the showman. And I think that is one of those, isn't it? That one of those things that we miss about the crooners, because they were incredible showmen.
Oh, yeah.
Although even though they looked as if they were just standing there singing, they completely dominated the space that they were in. And that is something which is quite hard to, again, it's difficult to get your head around how that works. So, I mean, even, we haven't spoken about people like Ella Fitzgerald or anything like that, but I mean, there are things about those people when they, I suppose, really similar to when she was in a good space, Amy Winehouse.
Yeah.
There was something about their presence that was captivating.
And I guess a lot of people would call it star quality.
Well,
that's hard to define as well, isn't it?
It's impossible.
Yeah, or the X Factor.
Yes,
but then I guess it's just, we're all learning from they were learning from the greats, and then everything's all passed down. It's sad to see nowadays when I watch a pop star on the TV, or even doing something like the halftime concert at the Super Bowl or something. It's like, I just want to see someone enjoying themselves and smiling. It's so rare now. It's like not cool. You cannot show your emotion on stage anymore, like on a TV, to a camera. And that is something that I miss. Yeah, I would love for somebody to get up in some studio for ITV, BBC, Channel 4, anyone, and just absolutely dominate the stage like they used to. Bruce Forsyth, when he died a few years back, that was really, you just felt like, if you thought about it, that's kind of the end of that kind of entertainer. I guess it goes back to variety and vaudeville and all that kind of stuff, but it's dead now. It doesn't exist in terms of mainstream TV and that kind of stuff. And that's another thing I'm trying to keep alive, really. I'm just as silly as you can be, but also I sing these great songs, and it's such a pleasure to be able to bring happiness to people in that way. And And you know, back then in the 50s, the 60s, like Sinatra, or especially when they would do they would do a solo spot to the camera with just one background behind them and the orchestra playing over there, perhaps, or some kind. I don't know how they did that actually, some playback. And it was just one guy or girl singing to the camera, and that was all you needed, you know, because everything was on their face, the whole story of the song. Oh. And sorry, I've got low battery.
Right, that's amazing, because as you said that, your face disappeared. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, so that, I know what you mean. It is missed, and I wish it would come back. I wonder when it will. Maybe somebody listening to this will be that person to bring that kind of style back and make it popular again.
Yeah, well, these things are cyclic anyway. Let's face it. You know,
absolutely, I think so. Yeah,
circles, you know, it's good. So anyway, so you're
right. Yeah,
you're sailing around the around the Greek islands. You don't quite know where you are, and you don't really care.
Yes,
the sun's out. So you've got plenty of work coming in, I'm assuming now. Have you?
It's nearly back to normal. The only thing I'd say is different to 2 years ago is that everything's a lot more last minute, and I have no idea why actually. But I think in the beginning, when work started up again, it was because things were postponed, and things were postponed last minute. So then entertainment was booked last minute. But now it just seems like just an influx of messages saying, "Are you available this weekend?" and all that kind of stuff. Well, I'm not available because I'm on a cruise ship. But when I get home, I'm excited to return almost back to normal. Yeah, and get these last minute gigs in as well. I'll take it all at this point because I do miss it so much. And I have a wedding next July to pay for too. So there's lots going on. And it's all very exciting. So that's good. But also, I want to be able to produce another album at some point soon and get the music going out there. It's all changed since I brought out the last album, and I have like a better strategy to promote the thing. It's so easy nowadays, but there's a surefire strategy to success, and that is well documented all over YouTube. But that's what I'm excited about. I've got a wedding. I'm gonna bring out some more music, and meanwhile, I'll enjoy these kind of trips any day of the week too.
Good stuff. Good one. I think that on that note, we'll finish there. That's really good. So thanks ever so much, Shane. So.
My pleasure.
I'll put some links in the show notes. All right, so people can find out about you. So
okay, thank you. Yeah, that's great.
And it's really good to catch up because it's been a bit of a while. It's been quite a long.
It has, yeah. It's been
so long that my hair's grown. So yeah.
Well, thanks, Vic. Yeah, I wonder how long it was. Maybe let's say it's like, because I think I was probably about 14, or maybe not even that old when I started having lessons with you, and I was aware that I didn't have them for a very long time with you, and to my shame, I'm still not very good at the guitar, but but I think it's probably coming up to like 17 years ago, something like that. Yeah. So it's really good to catch up with you, but I'm aware I've spoken mostly about myself, so I would like to hear more about you.
That's what it's all about, mate. People don't want to hear about me. Anyway, I'll speak to you soon. All the very best.
Speak soon, mate. Thanks very much. And to you. See you, mate.